Hash Heart Echo Stories. Hash the Stranger at Table 7. A Circumflex Euros, Part 1. Hash a story of unexpected love. Intro. A circumflex euros. Hook. A circumflex euros. First 60 seconds. What would you do if the person sitting across from you in a quiet little diner turned out to be the very person you had been running from your entire life? Not a criminal, not an enemy. Someone far more dangerous than that. Someone who could make you feel alive again. A circumflex euros. After you had spent 20 years convincing yourself that you were already dead inside. This is the story of Arthur Calloway, a 72-year-old retired schoolteacher from a small town in Vermont. A man who ate alone, who drove alone, who woke up alone every single morning and told himself it was fine, that this was enough, that a man his age didn't need anything more than his coffee, his crossword, and the quiet. But life. A circumflex euros, stubborn, relentless, and cruel in its kindness. A circumflex euros had other plans. Welcome to Heart Echo Stories. My name? Well, you already know who I am. I'm the voice that finds you late at night when you can't sleep, when something in your chest feels hollow and you don't quite know why. Today's story is called The Stranger at Table 7, and I promise you this. A circumflex euros. By the time we reach the end of Part 2, you will never think about loneliness the same way again. Let's begin. Arthur Calloway had been eating breakfast at Mabel's diner every single morning for 11 years. Every morning, without fail. Rain, snow, summer heat, even the year his left knee gave out and he had to hobble in with a wooden cane. A circumflex euros. Arthur came to Mabel's. He sat at the same table, table 4, by the window. He ordered the same thing, 2 eggs over easy, white toast, black coffee. No sugar. He read the newspaper. A circumflex euros, an actual paper newspaper, not one of those phone screens. A circumflex euros, and he spoke to no one except to say thank you when the food arrived. The waitresses at Mabel's all knew Arthur. They liked him in the way you like a piece of old furniture that has always been in the room. Reliable, quiet, part of the landscape. His neighbor, a cheerful woman named Donna, once asked him why he ate breakfast at a diner every single day instead of cooking at home. Arthur had looked at her for a moment with those pale gray eyes of his and said, quietly, "Because cooking for one person makes the kitchen feel too big." Donna had not asked again. The truth was, Arthur's house had felt too big ever since Margaret left. Not left. A circumflex euros, that wasn't the right word. Margaret hadn't left. Margaret had died. 8 years ago, on a Tuesday in February, quietly, in their bedroom, while Arthur was downstairs making the very same black coffee he now drank alone at Mabel's every morning. He had married Margaret when they were both 24 years old. She had been a librarian. She used to leave little handwritten notes between the pages of his books. Notes that said things like, "I love the way you sneeze," or "You have flour on your ear," asterisk, or sometimes just, "Still here, still yours." Arthur had kept every single one of those notes in a shoebox under his bed. He had never told anyone about the shoebox. Not his daughter Linda, who called from Denver every Sunday. Not his old friend Paul, who still played chess with him on Thursday evenings. No one. Some things, Arthur believed, were between a man and the silence he lived in. And so life continued. Orderly, predictable, safe, until the 3rd Tuesday of October when a woman sat down at table 7. It wasn't unusual for strangers to come into Mabel's. It was a diner on the main road into town, after all. Travelers stopped. Truckers stopped. Occasionally, a tourist who had taken a wrong turn would come in looking confused and leave looking full. Arthur didn't pay them much attention. He had his newspaper. He had his eggs. But something made him look up that morning. He would never be able to explain what it was. A sound, perhaps, or maybe just a shift in the air. The way a room changes when someone enters it who carries something. A circumflex euros, a particular kind of quiet sadness. A circumflex euros, that you can feel before you even see them. She sat down at table 7, directly in his line of sight if he looked up from his paper at a particular angle. She was a circumflex euros. Arthur guessed a circumflex euros, somewhere in her late 60s, perhaps 70. She had white hair, cut short and neat. She wore a dark green coat that looked slightly too large for her, as though she had shrunk into herself at some point, and the coat hadn't been updated to reflect the change. She set a small leather bag on the table. She looked at the menu. She looked out the window. She looked at her hands. She did not look at Arthur. He looked back at his newspaper. The headline was about local road repairs on Route 9. He read the same sentence 4 times. When the waitress a circumflex euros, young Cassie, who had a small star tattooed on her wrist a circumflex euros, came to take the woman's order, Arthur heard the woman say, in a soft voice, "Just tea, please, and a blueberry muffin if you have them." Cassie said they did. The woman said, "Thank you, that's kind." Arthur turned a page of his newspaper. He was reading an article about a local school fundraiser when he became aware a circumflex euros, without looking a circumflex euros, that the woman at table 7 was crying. Not loudly, not in a way that would draw attention, just the quiet kind of crying that people do when they have been crying alone for a long time and have learned to be invisible about it. The slight sniff, the careful blink, the way a person tilts their head just slightly so the light doesn't catch the wet on their cheeks. Arthur knew that kind of crying. He had done it himself, in this very diner, on the first morning he had come here after Margaret died. Sitting at table 4, pretending to read a newspaper, tilting his head so no one would see, he folded his newspaper, he looked at his coffee cup, he looked at table 7, he looked away, he looked back. The woman was staring at her untouched muffin with an expression that Arthur recognized not as sadness exactly, but as exhaustion. The deep, bone-level exhaustion of someone who has been carrying grief for so long that they have forgotten what it felt like to put it down. Arthur Calloway had not spoken to a stranger in a diner in 11 years. He picked up his coffee cup. He stood up. He walked a circumflex euros slowly, because of the knee a circumflex euros, to table 7. The woman looked up. He said, "I don't mean to intrude, but I've been sitting over there for 11 years and I've learned that blueberry muffins are better warm. And they stop being warm in about 4 minutes. So if you're going to eat it, now's the time." The woman stared at him. Arthur realized, standing there, that this was possibly the strangest thing he had said to another human being in years. Then the woman laughed. It was a small laugh, surprised, like something that had escaped before she could stop it. She put her hand over her mouth, and her eyes a circumflex euros. Arthur noticed now that they were a deep, dark brown a circumflex euros, went from sad to something else, something he didn't have an immediate word for. "Thank you," she said. "That is very specific advice. I eat here every day," Arthur said. "I know things about the muffins." She laughed again, and this time she didn't cover her mouth. Arthur went back to table 4. He did not read the newspaper again that morning. He didn't see her the next day or the day after. Arthur told himself he wasn't looking for her. He was eating his eggs. He was reading his newspaper. That was what he came here for. That was the routine. The routine was what kept things manageable. The routine was the wall he had built, brick by careful brick, to make the too big house and the too quiet kitchen bearable. He was not looking for a woman with white hair and a dark green coat. On the 4th day, she came back. She sat at table 7 again. She ordered tea and a blueberry muffin again. And this time, a circumflex euros. Arthur saw it clearly because he was absolutely not watching a circumflex euros. She took a bite of the muffin almost immediately, while it was still warm. Something in Arthur's chest moved. A small, inconvenient movement. Like a door shifting on old hinges, he looked at his newspaper. By the time he looked up again, she was looking at him. Neither of them looked away immediately. She gave a small nod. He gave a small nod back. He returned to his newspaper. She returned to her tea. 5 minutes later, Cassie a circumflex euros, young, tattooed Cassie with the star on her wrist a circumflex euros, appeared at Arthur's table and set down a fresh cup of coffee. "Compliments of table 7, Cassie said, with a smile that Arthur found entirely too knowing for a 23-year-old. Arthur looked over. The woman at table 7 raised her own teacup very slightly. A small, dignified salute. Arthur raised his coffee cup back. He drank it slowly. It was very good coffee. Mabel's coffee was always good, but this cup somehow seemed better than usual. He didn't examine why. The next morning, Arthur arrived at Mabel's to find the woman already seated at table 7. She had, he noticed, kept the chair on his side of her table slightly pulled out from the table. Not much, just an inch or two. As if leaving a door ajar. Arthur Calloway had been a schoolteacher for 40 years. He had taught 7th grade English. He knew when he was being given an invitation. He walked to table 7. "May I?" he said. "Please," she said. He sat down. They did not say anything for a moment. It was not an uncomfortable silence. It was more like two people sitting down at the beginning of a very long conversation and taking a moment to remember how such things begin. "I'm Arthur," he said finally. "Eleanor," she said. "Eleanor Marsh." "Eleanor," he repeated. "That's a good name, a strong name." She looked at him with mild amusement. "Is it? I always thought it sounded rather serious." "Serious names are underrated," Arthur said. "Half the people I taught for 40 years had names that didn't suit them at all. I once taught a boy named Winston who cried every time anyone raised their voice, and a girl named Lily who could arm wrestle any boy in the 6th grade. Eleanor laughed, the same surprised laugh as before, like it kept catching her off guard. "You were a teacher," she said. "7th grade English, 40 years. That must have taken tremendous patience." "Or stubbornness," Arthur said. "My wife could never quite tell the difference." The word *wife landed on the table between them. Arthur felt it. He saw Eleanor notice it. "Was," she said softly. 8 years ago," he said. "February." She nodded, carefully, like someone who understood the geography of that kind of loss. "I'm sorry," she said. "It gets a circumflex euros," Arthur began, and then stopped. He had been about to say easier because that was what you were supposed to say. Instead, he said, "It gets quieter, not easier, just quieter." Eleanor was very still for a moment. Then she said, "Yes, that's exactly right. That's the word I've been looking for." Arthur looked at her. "How long?" he asked. 3 years, she said. His name was David. 3 years is still loud, Arthur said. "Yes," she said, "it is." They sat with that for a moment. Two people who had each been sitting in their own particular silence for years, suddenly in the same room, the same table, the same quiet morning light of Mabel's diner. "You're not from here," Arthur said eventually. "No, I'm from Connecticut. I came to visit my son. He lives about 20 minutes outside town." She paused. "He worries about me. I don't always know what to do with that." "Children who love their parents don't know what to do with loss," Arthur said. "They want to fix it, and they can't, so they worry instead." Eleanor looked at him with an expression he still couldn't quite name. "You're very direct," she said. "I'm 72, Arthur said. "I used up all my indirectness a long time ago." She smiled. It was not the quick surprised smile from before. It was slower, more deliberate. The kind of smile that means something. "I'm 69, she said. "Perhaps I'm not quite there yet." "You've got time," Arthur said. She looked out the window at the October morning, a circumflex euros, gold leaves, pale sky, the kind of New England day that looks like a painting of itself, a circumflex euros, and something in her face softened. "I wasn't going to come back," she said quietly. "After the first day, I was just passing through, and then I thought a circumflex euros, well, the muffin advice was very sound. It seemed worth returning for." Arthur said nothing, but he thought, "Still here, still yours." The thought startled him, so much he nearly knocked over his coffee. Eleanor Marsh stayed in town for 3 more weeks. She was, it turned out, staying with her son Michael and his wife and their 2 small children in a farmhouse on Birch Road. She had come for what was meant to be a long weekend and had somehow not left. Her son kept finding reasons for her to stay a few more days. She suspected he was doing it on purpose, and she didn't mind. Every morning, she came to Mabel's diner. Every morning, Arthur was already there. They began to share table 7. In 11 mornings of breakfast, Arthur learned the following things about Eleanor Marsh. She had been a music teacher. Piano, mostly, but also voice. She had taught for 32 years at a private school in Hartford. She had retired 4 years before David died, and sometimes she wondered a circumflex euros, carefully, not out loud to most people a circumflex euros, whether the retirement had been a mistake, whether having more time had meant having more room for grief to grow. She had 2 children, Michael, here in Vermont, and a daughter named Susan who lived in Portland, Oregon, and called her every single day without fail. Eleanor said this with a mixture of deep gratitude and gentle exasperation that Arthur found completely recognizable. She liked crossword puzzles. When Arthur mentioned he also did the crossword every morning, they discovered simultaneously that they had been competing against each other a circumflex euros, across different tables, in the same diner a circumflex euros, without knowing it. This fact delighted Eleanor in a way that seemed to genuinely surprise her, as though she hadn't expected to be delighted by anything. She played piano still, every evening, in Michael's living room after the grandchildren were in bed. She said it was the only time in the day when her hands knew exactly what they were doing. She took her tea with 1 sugar. She finished every blueberry muffin she ordered. She had a habit, when she was thinking carefully about something, of tracing the rim of her teacup with 1 finger very slowly. Arthur noticed this on the 3rd morning and could not stop noticing it after that. In 11 mornings, Eleanor learned the following things about Arthur Calloway. He had taught the same poem A Circumflex Euros, Robert Frost's *The Death of the Hired Man A Circumflex Euros, every year for 40 years, because he believed it contained, between its lines, everything there was to know about loyalty and loss and coming home. Several of his former students had told him, years later, that it was the only poem they still remembered. He had never told anyone how much this meant to him. He had a daughter, Linda, in Denver, who called every Sunday, and a son, James, who had moved to Australia 17 years ago and called on birthdays. Arthur did not say much about James, and Eleanor, who understood the specific silence around names like that, did not ask. He had a vegetable garden in his backyard that had gotten, he admitted, somewhat out of control in recent years. He grew tomatoes and zucchini and more basil than one man could ever reasonably use. Every summer, he left bags of vegetables on his neighbors' porches because he didn't know how to grow less of something once he'd started. He had not played chess in 3 weeks because his friend Paul had gone to visit family in Florida, and the Thursday evenings had become very quiet. He still took the same walk every evening that he and Margaret had taken together A Circumflex Euros, down Elm Street, left on Cooper, around the little pond on the far end of Birch Road, back home. He said he didn't know exactly why he still did it. Eleanor said she thought she understood. On the 8th morning, Eleanor asked if she could walk with him. Arthur said yes before he had finished thinking about whether he was ready to say yes. They walked in the evening light, and Eleanor talked about David A Circumflex Euros, not the grief of losing him, but the person he had been. A civil engineer who cried at movies. A man who could not cook anything except pasta and who made it, somehow, magnificently. A husband who had a habit of leaving every light in the house on so that Eleanor, coming home in the dark, would always walk toward light. Arthur listened. He was good at listening. 40 years of teaching had given him that, at least. When they reached the pond and stood for a moment watching the last of the sunset on the water, Eleanor said, "I haven't talked about him like this in a long time. Everyone else either cries or changes the subject. People don't know what to do with love that has nowhere to go," Arthur said. Eleanor looked at him. "Is that what it is?" She said. "That's what I think grief is," Arthur said. "Love with nowhere to go." Eleanor looked back at the water. "David would have liked you," she said quietly. Arthur thought about Margaret, about the notes in the shoebox. "Margaret would have liked you too," he said. And then, before either of them could think too carefully about it, Eleanor slipped her hand A Circumflex Euros, just briefly, just for a moment A Circumflex Euros, through Arthur's arm. They stood at the pond as the last light left the water. Arthur did not say anything. Neither did Eleanor. But something that had been closed in him for 8 years A Circumflex Euros, something he had not even known was capable of opening any more A Circumflex Euros, opened. Very slowly, like a window in a house that has been shut up for a long winter. On the 11th morning, Eleanor came into Mabel's, and she was wearing her dark green coat. Arthur had learned to read Eleanor Marsh in 11 mornings. He looked at the coat and he knew. She sat down at table 7. He was already there. He had this morning ordered 2 teas A Circumflex Euros, his own coffee and a tea for her A Circumflex Euros, without being asked. She looked at the tea, she looked at him. "Michael's wife's mother is arriving today," she said. "They need the room." "I see," said Arthur, "and Susan has been asking me to come to Portland for months." She paused. "I think it's time I went." Arthur nodded. He looked at his coffee. He looked at the October light in the window. He thought about 11 mornings, about crossword puzzles and evening walks and a hand through his arm at a pond at sunset. He thought about the way grief could, against all expectation, teach you something about being alive. He thought about a shoebox of notes under a bed. He thought about a piano playing in the evening after grandchildren went to sleep. He thought, "I am 72 years old, and I have been sitting alone at table 4 for 11 years. And I thought that was the life I had chosen, and it turns out I was only waiting without knowing I was waiting." He said none of this. He said, "Eleanor, can I ask you something?" "Of course," she said. "Would you acircumflex euros?" he started. And then his phone rang. He never got phone calls at breakfast. In 11 years at Mabel's, his phone had rung during breakfast exactly twice, both times by accident. He glanced at the screen. It was Linda, his daughter, calling on a Tuesday morning, not a Sunday. Arthur felt the cold come in before he answered. The way you always feel the cold before bad news arrives. He answered. Linda's voice was not right. "Dad,